as well. Recording will be shared internally, of course. First of all, let me get started with doing a little bit of a promotion. And no, I'm not promoting things because of money reasons. This is actually because I want to make things a little bit easier on myself. And what have we done? Our amazing Orgis has developed quite a bot which can do quite a few things for you. Among other things, this bot is good because we have lesson channels which we automatically create and to which we can add users. So I'd like to ask that if you haven't joined that yet, that you please do. It would be really appreciated. That link is going to be in the chat as well. Feel free to join and we'll add you guys to the appropriate channels as we go. One of the cool features that this thing has is this thing has actual, let me see here. So it has reminders, it has guides on how to get started, and basically, oh, here's your lesson that's coming up. But the cool shit is, let me scroll up a little bit. It's been a while since I've done this for myself, is that it can actually generate certificates for you. And it's probably because this is Cheese Master version 2.3 that I don't see the certificates. My certificates are probably in the others. What was it again? Orgus generate cert, right?
Get cert.
Get cert, get cert, and then let's do it. In my case, for a lesson that I've been able to attend, it'll only do it for lessons that you attended. I have to do that not here. I have to do that in my server, the dumbass. Yeah, Uncle Rat's on a roll today, guys. Let's go. This is gonna be a great lesson. Awesome. Very private while I share it on screen. Oh, I'm fucking up somewhere. I know there's a certificate comment in here somewhere.
Or is it just, I can't remember, is it just
Oh, it's
cert?
just cert these days.
Oh, it was
Right,
get
you've
cert.
simplified it.
Yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, you have to be, see,
Uh,
that's what I mean. You have to be subscribed to
it
the
just
lesson.
usually,
That's a perfect demonstration of what I meant. So let's just
okay,
use
just
this
try lesson
lesson.
51.
Yeah, let's
Do
use
this
the
one.
current one. So that's what we want. There we go. Let's go. What name would you like? Asswipe McFart face. Now it's thinking, should I allow this or not? No, no, it's generating my certificate. And I have a nice little certificate of completion. I'm going to share that on my other screen because that's there. I have a nice little certificate of completion for Asswipe McFartface. Isn't that cool? That's that's awesome, right? So basically what I want to say is please do join the server. That way we can add you to the lesson and you can get certificates for your LinkedIn. I mean, a certificate's a certificate, right? It is definitely useful to get you on the map. Another thing that I have to tell you guys is I'm sorry, I forgot that I had a little bit of a sticker over my webcam. That's not gonna help a lot now, is it? That's a lot better. So let me get you guys a nice background there. Use virtual background. No, 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 not choose avatar. What the fuck? What the hell is this thing? Why am I so old? I feel like I'm getting old. That's better. There we go. All right, so let's get started, shall we? I want to ask you guys, first of all, I want you to teach me what you understand in terms of broken access control. And I'm going to stop sharing that screen for a moment and I'm going to start sharing a whiteboard. I should be able to do that in a document, whiteboard, loading whiteboards, create a new whiteboard. So that's the broken access control one that we're going to fuck around with. You guys can see the whiteboard, right? You guys can follow along. Is that possible? Everything good there? Good accuracy fast. Yeah, you'll have to forgive me for my age. Like somewhere it went wrong and like suddenly I jumped from 12 years old to 50. I don't know how that happened, but we'll get over it. I see people can follow and watch. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Oh no, I'm not drinking coffee at 10 p.m. What kind of a maniac do you think I am? Okay, fine. I'm drinking coffee at 10 p.m. Coffee didn't ask for your opinion. Let's go. Let's talk about broken access control. What do you guys think about broken access control? Note it in the chat. You guys can also draw on screen if you guys prefer that. What do you think broken access control is? Give me some elements of broken access control. Anything. We'll start with mind mapping. Let's do it that way. Let's start with mind mapping. So let's start with that's disgusting. There we go. Let's start with a shape. Let's start with a circle. Oh shit. That's not what I wanted. Let's do something like that. So we'll start with the broken access control. Now, what do we have here? Simply a broken scenario is simply a scenario in which an attacker can access, modify, delete, or perform actions outside an application or system's intended permissions. I like that. There is definitely a lot of truth to that, but let's try to dissect that a little bit into its components because there's certain elements here to which this could apply, basically. Let's talk about the API level versus the web level. So there's going to be differences in those two already. We need to talk about those, but they also have similarities. So I see here that you say a scenario can access. So let's start with that. So they can have unmodified or unwarranted access to data. What does that mean? That you have a certain access controls. Now, how do those access controls work? And you'll have those both in web and API. Now, how do those access controls work? You'll have and there's more than just web and API access control issues. I know that, by the way, but I'll focus mainly on those two. Access control works through authentication. So there's different authentication mechanisms that will help you control access to certain resources. That's the same for web, that's the same for API. Now, here's where it's going to get a little bit different. So, for web, you're going to have mainly two types of IDOR, two types of bug. And you'll see this in the terms of the horizontal, and you'll have the vertical broken access control. So there's access control there, and it's mainly split into two pieces. So from web, you could draw the conclusion that there's these two that you need to focus on mainly. On API level, there's one more. Let's draw the conclusions here. Here you are going to have another one that's going to be so you'll have on function level, you're going to have one on level of the property, and you're going to have one on the level of the object. So there's three types of broken access control here versus two types of broken access control on web. We need to take that into account. So let's make these common areas. Let's make them a little bit of a color. Can we color them in? Let's see if we can group those. That's okay. We'll just fill. There we go. So these yellow parts, these are basically shared parts. These are API parts, so we'll group those together as well. And then you have the web parts, which are going to be here. Let's group those together. Let's give these a nice little infill. Let's make them, I don't know, red. Well, that's hard to read, isn't it? Let's make them light green. All right, and then let's make this one light green as well. Okay, so let's start with API then. API, we already grouped that. Let's give that a nice little color, light red. Sounds great. Okay, and then let's give this the same orange color so we can say that those are shared parts. All right, so in this course, in this whole section, I want to focus on this entire thing. Now, these access controls, the authentication, there's different types of authentication that actually exist. So you can have, for example, JWT, you can have OAuth, you can have the basic authentication, you can have authentication based on a session ID, And then there's also, of course, the session ID versus the authentication debate. We'll get more into that later. But all of these authentication mechanisms will matter more and more as we go deeper in this course. It's important to understand them because you're going to need to exploit these things in a semi-automated way. And before you can do anything like this semi-automated on any type of professional level, you're going to have to ensure that you know what the fuck you're talking about when it comes to your authentication tokens. Because let's talk about authentication tokens. Let's start there. We're going to zoom into these authentication tokens. And we'll forget about session ID for a moment. We'll talk about JWT, OAuth, and BASIC. What is an authentication token? Can anybody tell me what an authentication token is? What's the definition of an authentication token? By the way, that's a good answer as well, Balloon. As well, Admiral. I like those answers. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I like these types of interactive sessions. It's a lot easier for me to teach that way. It's a deep question that I asked, right? Anything used to verify a user's identity and grant them access to specific resource or dude, that is spot on. Congratulations, man. That's the best explanation I've heard from a student since I started teaching these lessons. And the thing is with that, that sounds funny, but that identity part, it's basically a representation of yourself. It's a representation of who you are. Like my ID, for example, that's also a token. My physical ID, that's a token because it's a representation of my identity. Your passport, that's a token. In like in Belgium, they call it Rijksregister. In America, I think it's called a social security number. All of these things are tokens that represent you. And these tokens, what are their use basically? Why do you get a token? Because you don't want to have to authenticate every time. Every single time that you want to do an action, you don't want to authenticate. So what have they thought about? Let's make an authorization token, give you basically a token to after you log in, after you authenticate, after you identify yourself, after you give the officer your passport, he'll give you a ticket, which is the representation of yourself. After you identify your baby to the city hall, they will give your baby a social security number. Basically, the identification is just that login part or the registering slash login part, whereas the authentication is then giving that baby its social security number. So really well done, dude. That answer is really spot on. I love it. Good job, dude. It's really important to know this. And why is it so important? Because we need to know which authentication token we are playing with when we're going to semi-automatically hunt for this stuff. It seems like I'm going to start with a lot of maybe quote unquote basic stuff, but I would like to highlight or like press on the fact that it's anything but basic. The thing is, what we are going to do is I want you guys to realize that when I show you a little bit of a lab environment, when I show you a little bit of a testing environment that me, Orgus, or my team has created, these labs aren't real life scenarios. And I think most of you realize this by now. Because admit it to yourself, how often have you spent time on labs and afterwards you're completely fucking lost in a real life scenario? Like you can't even get started on bug bounties, let alone fucking bind a bug. Is that true? Am I correct? Like, right? Damn, fuck that shit, dude. I feel you guys. I feel you guys. Why is that? Because I have the same fucking shit. When I got started, I was like, what do you even report in bug bounties? Okay, like I know how to find certain things now, but what type of target do I even pick? There's a 250 billion different targets out there and 500 gazillion platforms. What the fuck do I go for, dude? This is fucking scary. And it was scary because there's all these big ass hackers. Dude, let me tell you, once you break the barrier, once you break in, there's like an 85% success rate. But breaking that barrier is disgustingly difficult. It's disgustingly difficult because you're going to learn about certain methodologies. You're going to be putting together certain ways that you learn about, like access control, for example, and you still don't have the full picture. Because how often have you learned about IDOR and it just tells you to change an identifier to a different number? My friends, let me tell you, if you do that and you work for me and you change in production to a different user that you don't own and you see their data, you're fired on the spot. If I notice that, you're fired on the fucking spot. And that sounds a little bit extreme, but how dare you, like that's fucking laws. That's fucking laws, dude. And the thing is, people just don't understand what am I really doing? What am I really testing? It's so super important to stand still or the fact, okay, I am now going through this application. I want to make it a little bit easier for myself. There's a very big reason why for me it was so easy to find broken access control issues when I am hacking. Like if I am hacking, there's two things that make it super easy for me. Number one, I automate stuff. Number two, I set myself up for success. Now, what do I mean by setting myself up for success? I picked the right targets. I picked targets which I have a hunch for that are going to be vulnerable. And I gotta admit this, I have this little advantage over a lot of people where I understand things a lot faster. So if I am testing a target, for me, it's really easy to understand. And for me, it's really easy to feel if it's going to be something for me or not. But you can already tell from the start if you're going to like it or not. Like the thing is, if you don't like a target, move on, pick a different one. But do stick to a target long enough to get things. And I know that a lot of you want to try bug bounty hunting. Well, my friends, this is the shit. This is literally the shit that you need to make money because this is consistent money. This is stuff that you can find consistently. And what do I mean by consistently? If you're really up for the challenge, at least a few per day. And that is no exaggeration. Like if you can find good targets which you can stick with for a long ass time and you can rotate because they deploy new shit, you're in a really good spot. And especially if you're not a stupid moron who doesn't know how to automate their shit. Because guys, for fuck's sake, this for me is if I have different user groups, I will click through an application multiple times. And after just clicking through, after just determining a user path, after like I will set everything up nicely. And then at the end, I will have a nice little report. I go through it. Blah, blah, blah. A good test that would take somebody who's manually testing all of these endpoints would take them weeks, takes me like not even an hour if I am very prepared. And the reason for that is that I will note down endpoints and stuff like that. But let's talk about this authentication a little bit after. Like, it's important that we do get a little bit acquainted with that. So let's first get on to this. I want to show you. Oh, right. I'm not sharing my screen, am I? Let's start with this. So basically, we know that dynamic applications require segregated access control. And access control ensures specific actions are restricted to authorized users. Now, let's start with access control. We've talked about authorization, authentication. We know what that is. We know about different ways that authentication happens. I haven't touched upon authentication versus session ID just yet. Now, what you also need to know is that some sites are badly programmed and they operate on session ID alone. What is actually a session ID? Basically, the session ID gets assigned to you when you make a connection to a web server, and that session ID allows the web server to know who you are in certain cases that can be very useful. For example, if you're logged in, to keep you logged in and stuff like that. So that there are certain ways that session IDs are still used for CSRF tokens, for example. But in our case, we will usually be looking at authentication tokens, and that's mostly in the header. You're going to have authentication headers, and we will focus a lot on JWT and basic headers. Now, why is that? That's because the targets that we're actually going to touch upon live also focus on these types of things. They focus on these types of like JWT, OAuth, basic authentication. We'll get through that. Oh shit, fuck. What the hell is going on? Not again. Ah, I got this pop-up that the meeting is ending in 10 minutes. I thought it just upgraded. What the fuck? Didn't I just upgrade Argus? Am I going crazy? I am going crazy, aren't I? I'm probably going crazy. Yeah, so let's just call this part two, guys. That's okay. If it ends in 10 minutes, that's no problem. The thing is, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a new meeting up. We'll call this the break time then, and we'll see each other in that new meeting and we'll get started when everybody joins there. I'm going to export this board as well so we have it, but let's get that set up first so everything is in order. So let me do that real quick for you. Let me stop sharing. Let me export this whiteboard. Exit full screen. Great preparation from my end. I really did think we were. I thought that yeah, almost not too long again, go updated, but that's my bad. Why can't I see Zoom? There we go. So let's create a new meeting. Schedule PSC intro part two. That is today. That's gonna start at right now. Why not? We can also get that arranged by then, and that way we can hunt a little bit more. So I'm going to paste an invite to part two in the messages. Yeah, I really thought that we upgraded, but fuck that shit. Time to make my third cup of coffee. Holy shit, dude. That is fucking ridiculous. That is ridiculous. Oof. Lock my screen there. There we go. Anyway, guys, well, the timing that is left in this meeting is about 7 minutes. Yeah, I think I may have used the wrong account once again. So I'm gonna jump to the next meeting. We'll hold a short break after, and then I will see you guys there. See you in a bit.